All right, everybody, welcome to the Patterson Report Eagles halftime show edition. I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. And weeknights when the birds are on, I think we're going to try and start doing these from time to time because it's kind of fun to be able to live react to these things. I wish I could have a better live reaction to this game. Offense looks very weeks 1 through 5-ish, and that's across the board. Jalen Hurts, I thought, has missed some very critical reads. I don't know if there's a play where, I thought he should have been checked for concussion. His head went down really hard. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying he has one. What I am saying is, since that play, his reads have been slower. He's been more unsure of himself. He got shaken up on that play. I'm just not quite sure how. And there's been a couple plays where he just hadn't seen the field right, or he's kind of predisposed in where he's going. He missed Devontae Smith wide open over the middle of the field early in the first half. I want to say we were midway through the second quarter.
Hurts is in the medical tent right now.
Okay, that tracks, honestly, because something wasn't quite right. And then that play in the end zone. Look, he was under pressure. We'll get to the O-line in a second. I haven't been thrilled with them either. But, he had Saquon. I don't think it was Saquon. Forgive me if it was Gainwell. He had a running back, and he had Devontae Smith running free on the left side of the end zone. And one of the things Jalen Hurts is typically so good about is scrambling with his head up, and he just missed them both. He went head down the scramble and missed an easy touchdown throw. So what have you been seeing from him today that's looked different from the past few weeks?
He just doesn't look comfortable back there, which is really weird considering Washington's defense. It's one that people like to pick on, honestly. Russell Wilson had himself a day last week.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where, sure, he probably is concussed. Like I said, we're not doctors, but the signs point that, especially with him being in the medical tent, he's probably getting checked for one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the medical tent just popped up on my screen on my phone, but I think people are saying he's okay. I have a chat rolling in. So it's just one of those things where it's just not his night, and we got to hope he picks it up in the second half. But as like you were saying, his reads do seem slower, and he doesn't seem all quite there, which he has been the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, and look, we talked about it the last 2 weeks, and one of the reasons I think, the offense has kind of unlocked a little bit, and, they've kind of opened up the big play is, A.J. Brown was taken away from Jalen Hurts. He had to get creative. He had to look over the middle of the field to Devontae Smith, make guys like Calcaterra make plays. Like, he had to get creative and look for other guys. I think there's something to be said for A.J. Brown being a little bit, and this is of no fault of his own, he's a sensational receiver, but he's a little bit too much of a safety valve, I think, at times for Jalen Hurts. And he gets too caught up in trying to find ways to feed him the ball and overlooks guys like Devontae Smith sometimes. Because it's no secret that when Brown was either out completely or dinged up, Devontae Smith explodes. And then we're seeing today where, Brown's, I know this isn't his first game back, but he looks, he's healthy. He's ready to go. And you can see Jalen sometimes trying to force feed him the ball.
Yeah. That's what you do with alpha wide receivers, and for better or for worse, we had Stafford and Calvin back in the day. I think if Calvin didn't retire, I think Stafford would not be the quarterback that he is today. If I'm quite honest with you here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where they target him so much. You see Josh Allen now, after losing Stephon Diggs, he's spreading the ball around. It's sort of like a mindset mentality thing. It's really weird, but you got to get the ball to your best players, and of course AJ Brown. He might be the most valuable player to the Eagles offense. I'm not saying he's the best, but it feels like he's the most valuable.
I don't disagree with you. I think he's put in a position to where he's the most valuable because the passing game does flow through him. I think, we have 2 top 10 wide receivers, in my opinion, talent-wise. So and AJ Brown's definitely one. In the league, he's probably somewhere between 1 and 3, in all honesty. Like, I think he's that good.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're going from, AJ Brown to I'm trying to get another, like, T. Higgins or, somebody who's pretty squarely the 3 on their team. Like, Devontae Smith is in that same echelon as AJ Brown. So the same way, you almost have to treat them the same, because even though one is quote unquote the alpha, they both are in the same conversations. They both should get the same consideration as far as ball share goes.
See, I disagree with you a little bit. I think AJ Brown's kind of underrated by the national media and everyone else. I think, like you said, he is in that tier 1 of guys with a Justin Jefferson, a CeeDee Lamb, and a Jamar Chase, and I feel like that's kind of it, unless I'm missing someone, which would be terrible. But anyway, I feel like Devontae Smith's in that tier 2, like firmly in the tier 2. I just don't think he's a tier 1 guy. There's not many of them. Like I mentioned 4, I think that's it. Like I said, unless I'm missing someone, Malik Neighbors probably. I think he's up there now. But besides that, it's like still he's still a top guy, and you got to get him the ball. But it just feels like he takes a back seat when AJ Brown's in. It kind of hurts the offense, I feel like, a little bit, because having 2 good guys get the ball is way better than 1. We know that.
Yeah, and it seems backwards because of their frame. And I'm not in no way saying AJ Brown won't go over the middle of the field. That's just not the routes that are typically drawn up for him as much.
That RPO was nice.
It was, yeah. It does happen, but it just seems noticeable that on the days where Devontae Smith is more involved in the offense, the Eagles use the middle of the field more. Then that's just I would just like to see more of that. In the second half, but they got to find a way to score. Taking it off of Jalen Hurts a little bit, I don't think the O-line has been great today. I think there was a lot of high expectations with Jordan Mailata coming back, getting that all-pro level left tackle back to protect Jalen's line side. But I don't know if it's being apart or if there's a communication issue from all the offensive line changes. But this is one of their worst games so far, I think, as far as keeping Jalen comfortable and clean back there.
Easily, which is kind of a surprise to me. Like I thought it would be Cincinnati would be that game with Trey Hendrickson, and we've talked about how awesome he is. I mean, Washington still has some talent up front in Deron Payne, but he hasn't had the best season. The edges aren't quite there. They traded them. I know they had Chase Young, who's kind of struggling now, but Montez Sweat transformed that defense in Chicago, and they didn't really get to refill those positions quite yet in the draft. So, like, it's kind of, I'm trying to think of a word, just stunning that they're struggling this much up front. I know the D tackles are great, but the edges just aren't quite there yet. And I don't know. I wasn't expecting them to struggle this bad. I thought this would be an offensive shootout. Obviously, we're going to get to the defense, but it's just been a rough first half for the Eagles, and hopefully they pick it back up. They were talking how last week it started slow in Cincinnati and Baltimore and just went off the rails with about 0.2 seconds in the third quarter. So we'll see what happens here tonight.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is I've said this every season. You can pick every Eagles game and say the same thing. This team is bizarre in that it doesn't go as its quarterback goes. It doesn't go as its wide receivers go. The Eagles' success has always been determined by their offensive line. I mean, A.J. Brown's the best player on the offense, although Saquon Barkley, 1A, 1B, you can talk about that. But make no mistake about it, the most important unit on the Eagles' offense since 2017 at least is that offensive line. That's their number one weapon. And if the offensive line can get back in sync and start opening up some holes for Saquon, we all know how this game's going to go. If the Eagles can run 7-8 minute drives and end with touchdowns, you can turn your TV off and kick your feet up. It's going to be okay. If that doesn't happen, and you're going to make them win with, make Jalen Hurts' arm beat you straight up without a running game, that's when you kind of start to sweat as an Eagle fan. Because he's a good passer. He's a good deep ball thrower. He's all these things, but it's based off that run game.
Yep. It all revolves around the run. And, Saquon Barkley has 15 rushes in the first half. That's almost I think it's more than he had last week. I think he had 14.
Well, yeah, but last week they were. I mean, it was
Last
like
week, last week
14
was a different game script
Yeah.
and everything. I understand. I'm glad they're getting him some, rest. When they don't necessarily need him and they don't have to lean on him all that much. But tonight, second half, like you said, we're gonna have to lean on him. He's at 15. I think he could easily hit 30. I think
Oh yeah.
that's the way this game needs to go, especially if Hurts is gonna play, but not 100% like he's been in the first half. So like, I just think Saquon goes with his offense, but it feels like AJ Brown. Once you're missing a piece, it feels like the whole offense kind of falls apart.
A little bit, but there's, it's like, think of it like Jenga. Like, AJ Brown's up at the top. You can pull AJ Brown and a couple things going to fall, but the structure's going to be all right. Saquon Barkley's piece is at the ground level. If the Eagles lose this run game, I don't give a shit what AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen. I don't care how talented they are. This team is built to respect the run, beat you over the top with the pass. If you take the run away and they're able to keep everything in front of them, we just saw at the end of the first half. I mean, the Eagles can sustain a drive. They went, 87 yards over a long drive, but they're not going to punch it in. And that's what kind of worries me for the second half, that they can't figure it out up front. On the flip side, the Eagles defense is doing everything they can do to give them even a prayer at winning this thing and hanging around. I mean, Washington's been putting up numbers on just about everybody, and secondary continues to hold up. Could not be more proud of Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, we'll get into Terry McLaurin, who's been invisible tonight.
Wow.
But this Eagle defense is keeping him in it.
I mean, really, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean have just transformed this whole defensive unit. Zach Bond as well. Zach Bond has been the top PFF graded linebacker 3 weeks in a row.
He's a stud.
My expectations were small deal. He's going to perform at like an average starter haven't and we'll be okay because, we haven't got much out of our linebackers. This dude has stepped in and become a stud. I mean, it's all over the tape tonight even. Like, Jane Daniels isn't getting stuff done.
No. And the Kobe Dean, too. I mean, we have, Bond's getting a lot of the press because he's been sensational. He deserves all. I mean, I think he got Player of the Week last week, if I'm not mistaken.
First since Jeremiah Trotter for Eagles linebackers. I think it was 04, I want to believe.
Probably. And the Kobe Dean's right there. I mean, that pick in the end zone was CB1 level read. The athleticism's off the charts. All the things we expected him to finally do, he's doing. So those two together have been great. You're right. I mean, Quinyon and Cooper DeJean are going to be one of the best cornerback tandems we've had in a long time, and the first great homegrown one since I can't even remember.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
And then even on the back end, I mean, Reed Blankenship's as steady as they come. CJ GJ is what he is. But I guess the moral of the story is the back end, highlighted by the two rookies and the linebackers, are finally giving that D line a little bit of time to eat, and you're starting to see what they can do too. They were victimized early on with, the ball coming out in 2.5 seconds. I mean, they're not going to win. But now that the boys in the back are making them wait 3.5, 4 seconds, you're starting to see the guys up front flex a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Carter is just an absolute freak of nature. We knew that. He's been putting on a clinic. It seems like every week it feels like at this point. You know who was the highest graded edge rusher last week in all of the NFL?
Nolan?
Oh.
Really?
Bryce Huff.
See, that's interesting. I think Bryce Huff's been playing really well lately. And I know we got to get back to the game here because I'm watching my clock.
I'm watching the game, so I'll tell you when it comes back on.
Okay. I have it on behind me. But did you happen to see any of the clips from last week when there was a huge play on the defense? I don't remember which play it was. Yes. It was on a sideline.
It was the sack fumble that he caused, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, that's what it was. It was the sack fumble, kicked over to the sideline.
He was just
I don't know if it's if he's not gelling with the team, if he doesn't. I'm confused. But it was this huge turning point in the game. And you're right. He kind of shrugged his shoulders and walked away, and the defense celebrated without him.
It's very strange. Something that hopefully the coaching staff is going to get to the bottom of, because that's just so weird. But he caused a ginormous play, and
he
just walked off.
And by all accounts, I mean, you never hear anything to the contrary of the Eagles having a fantastic locker room. So that's what makes me wonder, like, why don't they like you, or do you not like them, or like what?
Or is he just one of those guys that's just like, you know,
maybe. Hopefully, I would love that. But all right, we got probably, if we're lucky, another minute or two here.
Oh, or yeah, it's getting there.
What do you think? What should we expect second half? Do you think? Washington gets the ball first. That's kind of out of our hands. If you're Nick Sirianni, how are you scripting that first drive?
I mean, you got to give the ball to Saquon and get him some good looks. I mean, get him on the outside. He's going to do some crazy stuff. You just got to feed Saquon and hope that Jalen's all right, and then hit him over the top with an AJ Brown deep shot. Like it's easy to beat Washington deep, and I'm confused how we haven't yet. I just don't know what's going on.
We almost agreed. Pending Jalen's health, if he comes out good and he gets 100%, I'm coming out of the half and trying to go deep with either Smith or AJ Brown. Because who was it? I think AJ Brown had a rookie matched up on him briefly. I think it was the third to last play of the first half. Hunt your matchups. If you get a rookie on AJ Brown, clear everybody else out and go over the top and hope for the best. You got to fire a shot across the path.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, let's get back to it. We'll see if either Ryan and I were even remotely close to right. None of that matters, though.
Point.
I would love to see Terry score 2 touchdowns. He's on my fantasy team. I want the Eagles to also win.
It's tough. It's a tough game script for us out here, man.
It is. I'll sacrifice for the Birds. As long as the Birds win, I'll deal with fantasy. But all right, let's get back to the second half. We will see you for our regularly scheduled programming next week. I'm Brandon. He's Ryan. Go Birds. All right.